In the aftermath of World War II, as the dust of global conflict settled and nations sought to rebuild, the Soviet Union extended a hand of friendship to the United States of America. The gift, handed over by children no less, would many years later reveal itself as a masterstroke of espionage, a Trojan horse hiding a marvel of Soviet engineering. This is the story of the Thing, known also as the Great Seal Bug. At the Potsdam Conference, held between July and August of 1945, the victorious Allies met to decide the fate of post-war Germany. As the vanquished nation was split in two and its capital, Berlin, divided into 4 occupation zones, tensions between the US, UK and France on the one hand, and the Soviet Union on the other were simmering. The ideological differences between East and West were on full view, and US President Harry S. Truman's disclosure to Joseph Stalin of America's new, devastating nuclear capabilities set the tone for the negotiations. The outcome of the conference was a mixed bag. While many issues were agreed, many others were left unresolved. Just 2 days after the conference ended, the Soviet Union decided it would be a good idea to present their American friends with a gift, and this is where our story truly begins. On the 4th of August 1945, a group of Soviet school children from the Vladimir Lenin All-Union Pioneer Organization, which was the Soviet equivalent of the Scouts, was sent on a visit to meet US Ambassador W. Averell Harriman at Spaso House. This was the official residence of the US Ambassador in Moscow. Harriman was presented with a beautifully hand-carved wooden replica of the Great Seal of the United States. The gift was intended as a gesture of friendship, or so it seemed, to their wartime ally. Little did Harriman and his diplomatic staff know that this gift would serve as the conduit for one of the most audacious eavesdropping operations in Cold War history. The seal, which was graciously accepted by Harriman, was given pride of place on the wall of the ambassador's library in Spaso House. For 7 years it hung there, silent and unassuming, as 3 different ambassadors conducted sensitive diplomatic business beneath its watchful gaze. But this was no ordinary decoration. Concealed within the ornate wooden carving was an incredible piece of Soviet technology, a passive listening device so advanced for its time that even today it sounds futuristic. The device itself was a triumph of minimalist design. Unlike conventional listening bugs of the era, it had no power source, no active electronic components, and required no wires. At its heart, it was what we would call today a resonant cavity microphone, consisting of a copper cylinder with a highly polished silver-plated interior. Inside this cavity was an adjustable mushroom-shaped disc and a thin membrane forming a capacitor. Completing the setup was an antenna, with the device carefully hidden within the seal carved from maple wood, with small holes drilled through it to allow sound waves to hit the diaphragm. The genius of what later came to be called the Thing lay in its passive nature. It only sprang to life when Soviet operatives beamed microwaves towards where it hung on the wall at Spaso House, which they did from outside in a surveillance van. This signal would energize the device, causing it to pick up and retransmit conversations from the ambassador's study. The Soviets could eavesdrop at will, without ever needing to enter the building, change batteries, or retrieve tapes. The passive nature of the device meant that it was more difficult to detect than conventional listening bugs, as it only transmitted a signal when illuminated by the microwaves outside. The mastermind behind this ingenious creation was Russian inventor Leon Theremin, the same brilliant mind that gave the world the ethereal electronic musical instrument that bears his name. Theremin was living in the US when he invented his famous instrument, but returned to the USSR in 1938. There are conflicting accounts surrounding his departure from the US, one being that he was abducted by Soviet agents, and the other that he returned of his own volition due to financial troubles and the impending war in Europe. Whatever account happens to be true, what is known for sure is that Leon found himself in a Soviet gulag for 8 years after being accused of being a counter-revolutionary. His scientific brilliance having been recognized, Theremin was put to work for the NKVD, creating novel technologies for use in espionage, including the passive listening device. The Americans for years remained blissfully unaware of the electronic ear in their midst, but in 1951, the first hint that something was amiss became apparent when a British radio operator monitoring open Soviet Air Force radio channels was surprised to hear a voice he recognized, that of the British air attaché. The radio operator quickly alerted his American counterparts, but a sweep of the embassy didn't uncover anything untoward. Shortly after this, an American radio operator overheard a conversation that seemed to emanate directly from Spaso House itself. Once may have been an anomaly, but twice was a coincidence that could not be ignored. The US State Department dispatched to Moscow two of its best technical surveillance experts, John W. Ford and Joseph Bezjan, to investigate. Again, a search turned up empty-handed. Then the next year, in 1952, the newly appointed US Ambassador George Kennan ordered another sweep of Spaso House after renovations had been carried out by Soviet workers. Again, no bugs were found, nor were any found during multiple further security sweeps. The US was, however, constantly suspicious that Western embassies and other diplomatic buildings had been bugged by the Soviets. Perhaps their suspicions stemmed from the fact that they were themselves trying to eavesdrop, and so assumed that the USSR would be doing the same. By September of 1952, and still convinced that the walls had ears, Bezjan was called in to do a more thorough search. Using what is called a crystal video receiver, Bezjan meticulously swept the residence, including the ambassador's library. While he did this, he got the ambassador to read out some unclassified text. Just then, Bezjan's equipment detected a faint but distinct howl echoing back. The source of the signal was traced back to the wall upon which the Great Seal hung. With bated breath, he removed the seal from its place. When the signal disappeared, he knew that he had found what he was searching for. The bug was somehow hidden within the Great Seal itself. The discovery sent shockwaves through the US intelligence community. Here was proof that the Soviets had been privy to countless sensitive conversations, strategy sessions, and policy discussions for many years. Who knew what secrets had been overheard and acted upon by the KGB. The FBI was immediately notified, and the device was sent to Washington to be inspected by the FBI's technical laboratory team. It was not only the FBI, but many other intelligence agencies that got involved in discovering the tiny device's secrets. The FBI, the Naval Research Laboratory, and even the British MI5 were all brought in to analyze and study the device, which they simply dubbed the Thing. After months of investigation and analysis, classified reports were issued detailing how the device functioned. Scientists across the Western world immediately got to work to develop countermeasures to detect other similar devices planted in embassies and diplomatic buildings across the world. Both the Americans and the British used what they learned to reverse engineer their own passive listening devices, the American project being codenamed Easy Chair and the British project codenamed Satyr. When the device was first discovered, the Truman administration recognized the diplomatic powder keg they were sitting on. The USA kept the discovery under tight wraps for a full 8 years. The motivations for this were twofold. Firstly, to allow time for the West to search numerous other of its embassies, missions, and consulates across the world for listening bugs, of which they found dozens, and second, they wanted to wait for an opportunity to reveal what the Soviets had done to gain maximal political advantage. It wasn't until 1960, at the height of tensions following the shooting down by the Soviets of an American U-2 spy plane piloted by Gary Powers, that the existence of the Thing was revealed to the world. This was done almost as a sort of Uno reverse card maneuver to demonstrate that both sides were equally guilty of eavesdropping on each other. On the 26th of May 1960, in a dramatic moment before the United Nations Security Council, US Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge Jr. unveiled the bugged seal. As Soviet representatives railed against American espionage in the wake of the U-2 incident, Lodge turned the tables, presenting concrete evidence of long-standing Soviet spying activities against America. The Thing stands as a watershed moment in Cold War espionage, marking a turning point in the silent war of intelligence and counterintelligence when the gloves between East and West truly came off. The incident spurred the development of new security measures and ignited a technological espionage and arms race that would persist throughout the Cold War and beyond. The cutting-edge technology contained in the device contributed to later development of passive RFID, or radio frequency identification technology, and other passive surveillance devices. Today, the Great Seal Bug resides in the National Cryptologic Museum, a silent reminder of a time when a simple wooden carving could conceal a wealth of secrets, and when the walls themselves might have had ears.